Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Arsenal Transfer Show. We've got all of three. That's it. That's the amount of stories that there are today. It's literally the quietest transfer window ever. And to be fair, that's not always a bad thing. This is today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Let's jump into the chat box and say good morning to those joining us live. Claire, Barry, Matt, we've got Brian and Carl, we've got Sid and Manny. We've got Matt says hello, of course, Matt G in the chat, Black Shine. We've got Paul, we've got Steve, we've got Luciondo. We've got who else have we got on the chat box this morning? Martin, Sport Mad, sorry. Dave, Ronald, Morgie, Mike. Thank you so much for always, all of you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you being here. Vivian, Canoe, Maria in the chat box. Carrie Ann in the chat box as well. Diavan Guru. We've got Temi. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate all of you listening. And if you've had a fantastic week so far, let's hope that it continues into the weekend, shall we? As Arsenal look to take on Manchester United on Sunday afternoon and really put to bed the title race to the best of their abilities if other results go their way. Although I should say that the likelihood of Manchester City recording a fifth successive game without a victory in the league is unlikely, considering they are hosting the team bottom of the Premier League. That said, Wolves have not lost in their last 4 games, drawing 3 and winning just 1, which ironically is a similar record to that of Manchester City. In fact, it's a better record than that of Manchester City. Wolves in the last 4 games have picked up more points than Manchester City. Strange stat, but the reality of that is what we find ourselves in, and Arsenal will take on Wolves this weekend. Let's not waste any more time, though, and jump into today's stories, shall we? And we begin with a report from Ben Jacobs, who suggests that there is set to be a significant push from Saudi Arabia once again into the European markets, and that there are a number of players, as many as 50 potential players on that list that is wanted by Saudi clubs to improve the Saudi Pro League. One of those players is, according to Ben Jacobs, Gabriel Martinelli. We know that Gabriel Martinelli has been on the link of Saudi Arabia for a little while. He's been linked with there before, but it's not looked like he was ever going to go. And if we're looking at an area in the Arsenal team that we might see upgrading, it's probably the left wing and central midfield, maybe centre forward still, but most likely the midfield and that left wing position are the key areas. If you look towards the summer, what Arsenal might be the most interested in trying to find in terms of strengthening, upgrading, and looking to potential players like Kenan Yildiz, for instance, as one of those players has been linked with Arsenal quite heavily, but it could be somebody else entirely. But yes, Gabriel Martinelli looking likely at the moment to be amongst those who will be embroiled in a transfer saga in the summer. Whether he goes, whether he stays, remains to be seen. Now, Isan Khan of the Mail reporting last night that Kai Havertz, and the reason as to why Kai Havertz has not been getting as many minutes as people maybe would have hoped or expected by this point, is that Arsenal supposedly have concerns over his long-term fitness following the knee injury that he suffered, of course, and the issue with his knee flaring up in recent weeks. The setback that he suffered in November, that, of course, was confirmed by Julian Nagelsmann, damaged the ligaments in the same knee that he injured in August, and supposedly how his body reacts in the next few games will be absolutely critical into Havertz's return. Mikel Arteta, of course, I imagine will be asked about this situation, about Havertz, during the press conference later on today. But Arsenal, as we've known for some time, are being extra cautious when it comes to Kai Havertz. We've known about this for a little while, and that they are being super, super, super careful about the reintegration of Kai, trying to get him the most exposure that they can, trying to get him the best level and balance of exposure while not potentially re-injuring his knee. And that's a delicate process, it seems. And the hope is that he is going to be okay. He's going to be fine. But I guess it's going to be something of a chance that needs to be taken eventually. Because the only way you build up that fitness really is in those match scenarios, testing its strength in the unpredictability of a non-training setting. Hope that he is going to be okay. We hope that he is going to respond well to the rehab and that he's going to be able to come back into the side as soon as possible. But as mentioned before, Mikel Arteta will be facing the media a little bit later on this afternoon, where I'll be facing questions from myself and other members of the media as we look ahead to the game against Manchester United this weekend. I imagine Kai's setback, in inverted quotation marks, will be something of a focus and on the agenda as well. So let's wait and see what happens. But there are going to be many questions, I imagine, on the Manchester United game, on the latest team news, and maybe more broadly as well about the title race. And I hope that we get a little bit of insight into the likes of Pierre Hincapié and Ricardo Calafiori and when they might be back. Same with Max Dowman, of course, as well. So really, really hopeful that we finally get some good news on those players, because we've been waiting a long time to get that. There will also be more reaction, of course, to Ethan Nwaneri's loan to Marseille, which is set to be confirmed imminently, after we've seen already he's landed in Marseille and he's already met with some of the fans. But that deal is set to be confirmed as soon as feasibly possible, really, and we'll hopefully get some confirmation on that soon as well. But yeah, let's hope that we can get some positive news on Calafiori and on Pierre Hincapié as well, because we need both of them as we move through the rest of this campaign. That said, I thought Miles Lewis-Skelly did really well. Did anyone see the Gazzetta dello Sport player ratings that have been doing around? A good friend of the show, Sam Blitz from Sky, tweeted the Gazzetta dello Sport player ratings in the newspaper. They gave Gabriel Jesus, unsurprisingly, an 8. Does anyone want to take a guess, if you haven't seen, what they rated Christian Mosquera's performance in that game? To give you some more context, Timber was a 6, Lewis-Skelly was a 7, Zubimendi 6.5, Eza 6.5, Trossard 7, Rice 6.5, Gyökeres 7. Anyone want to take a guess what they rated Mosquera in that game, considering you think about the moments that he had where he stopped that 2-on-1 situation developing? It was really great with his anticipation, his strength and his tackling. 5.5. I think they gave him the lowest rating of any player in the Arsenal team. Quite staggering, really, considering just how impressive he was in the game. So yeah, it just goes to show you how people can watch a game and have a completely different observable truth than what everybody else saw in the game. Yeah, salty much, I think, is probably the best way to to put it. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. 5.5. He was arguably man of the match alongside Jesus in that he was absolutely astonishingly good. So really, really, really positive. And maybe just a little bit of saltiness from the Italian press. Right, let's go to part 2, a longer edition of part 2 today, which means plenty of time for your questions, your thoughts, your feelings and queries and more right after this. All right, this is part 2 of today's show, where we'll be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. So now is the time to do that. If you've got any questions, now is the opportunity for you to throw them into the chat box, and we'll kind of go through as many as we can. Spearman says, wasn't Mosquera awkward with his defending in that game? No, he was excellent. Mosquera was absolutely brilliant against Inter Milan, considering that's his first exposure to minutes since he's come back from injury as well. The 2-on-1 situation, how he dealt with that and forced Lautaro Martinez to make that mistake in that strike, was so good. After he was left at the back on his own to deal with both Susic and Lautaro, the fact that that didn't lead to a shot on target was brilliant in the way he anticipated both players' movements. But he was strong in his defending. He was anticipating the movements of his opposition players really, really well. I was just so impressed, and it's really important that we've now got him back available and fit once again. Francis, it's absolutely great to have Madueke in the team at the moment. He just provides some really good depth to the squad, doesn't he, Madueke? He's added that level that we've needed behind Bukayo Saka and pushed Bukayo Saka and given us the ability to rest Bukayo Saka more comfortably as well. Simon says Semenyo was the guy that we needed instead of Madueke. Perplexing how they got that so wrong. I mean, Semenyo obviously would looking at the potential move to an Arsenal with Saka already there, when he can go to Manchester City, start games on the right-hand side. Very similar to Brian and Burmo, the idea of seeing that deal happen. It's not really perplexing when you consider the amount of money extra it's costing. Of course, £15 million at least more than what Madueke cost. Wages significantly more than what Madueke's were as well. So I don't think it's perplexing at all, especially with the context. Maria says, I thought it was amazing, but I did doze off for a bit due to the game being after my bedtime. It was a late game. It's really late when you're abroad as well. Like 9 o'clock kickoff in the evening is really strange, isn't it? A 9 o'clock kickoff in the evening for those European games. And when you leave the stadiums, the infrastructure of those cities just cannot really handle that time of kickoff, especially if you leave the stadium a little bit later. There's no, transport back into the towns, really. It's something I think UEFA needs to look into a little bit more and have some earlier kickoffs, like 7 o'clock UK, 8 o'clock CT. It just seems really strange that they have those late kickoffs. Angerman says Semenyo wasn't available. To be fair, he did sign a brand new contract in the summer with a view to that buyout clause allowing him to leave in January or the following summer. So it's also a really fair point as to why he wasn't really available in the summer. Ricardo says, is Eza at risk of losing his place in the national team if he doesn't get more minutes and improves his form? It must be on his mind. Yes, at the moment, the talk is certainly around the press pack that the feeling is that he's not going to get selected for the England team based upon the amount of minutes and exposure that he's getting at the moment as well. Barry says, Tom, have you seen the Ian Wright interview of Dennis Bergkamp? I haven't yet. I'm looking forward to. If it's out there to watch, you have to send me a link to it, Barry, and I'll try my best to find it and give it a watch. Matthew says, Tom, is it true Calafiori is pushing for a start against Man United? I mean, we've not really heard too much around Calafiori, not from, like the usual sources, but hopefully he's back in the squad soon. I'm just doing a quick Twitter search online, and there's a few people are posting that he's posted on Instagram, that he's there. So hopefully we can see him back with the squad very, 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 very soon indeed. But yeah, I've not seen anything concrete at this point, but hopefully he's back. We'll hear more from Arteta on him today. I don't think I'll bring him straight back in and start him after that amount of time out. You want to be as careful as possible so he stays available for as long as possible as well. Pavlino says, for us, 10 p.m. and the adrenaline kicks in and I can only get to sleep at about 1 a.m. in the morning as well. Yeah, I can imagine for some other people the times. I mean, you've got to think about, we're moaning about a 9 p.m. kickoff. Some people have got like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. kickoffs around the world. So, maybe we're being a little bit overzealous in complaining about a 9 p.m. kickoff. Dave says, I would suggest benching Calafiori for when he returns. I agree with you. You got to ease him back in. You don't want to throw him in too quickly. Helicopter says, do you think maybe Waneri could be getting a spot in the England team if he performs well at Marseille? There's nothing to say that he couldn't. If he has an absolutely brilliant second half of the season and he shows Thomas Tuchel that he can perform and play every single week, why not? So I wouldn't rule it out. It's probably unlikely, but I would not rule it out. Tom Hines says, I had a dream last night that we said we sold Eze in the summer. Wonder what my brain is trying to tell me. I'd be very surprised if that reality came to the fore. Anthony says, am I the only one getting tired at how we always seem to be playing our games? And after City, we played on Tuesday. Why are we playing then on Sunday? Well, to be fair, I think that, playing Tuesday, Sunday, it's not too bad to have that extra little bit of rest considering Man United have had the whole week off. I get what you're saying about playing after City, but it's just the way the fixtures are falling broadcast-wise at the moment. So I'm not too worried about it. If anything, City have had less recovery time from their game against Bodeglimt that they lost and have now apparently reimbursed all of the fans that travelled out there as well. So, yeah, look, I'm not. It's just not one I'm really I can't really get too bogged down and being concerned with all of that about how there is a distance between certain games. Jelly says, "Is this the fittest Arsenal squad has had all season?" I mean, right now the players that are missing are Calafiori and Cappier and Dauman. Havertz is kind of a question mark in terms of his fitness. So at the moment, we've got the most players available that we've had in a very long time. So yeah, you would say. Yes, I think so. Aoife says, I think his dueling is great, but the rest of his defending needs to be improved, and that's okay because he's not a natural defender. I assume is that Lewis Skelly? Yeah, I think it's Lewis Skelly. It's a great defender, says Franz, but his Achilles heel is his speed. Ken says, anyone else smiling a little when Marino and Rice got their very tactically clever yellow cards against Inter, so they're now ready for the knockouts? I saw this. So obviously, Arsenal's game against Inter Milan saw a couple of players get the yellow cards that mean they are now suspended for the game against Kairat. Is it tactical? Was it by design? It'd be interesting to know if there was a little bit of cheekiness going on there, but interesting. DJ says, has Matteo Tognozzi joined Arsenal yet, or is he still under contract at Napoli? Matteo Tognozzi, I thought he was Juventus for some reason, not Napoli, but he didn't join Arsenal. The reason why he didn't join Arsenal was because Micheli actually ended up joining instead. They decided against appointing Matteo Tognozzi, and instead they appointed Micheli as the right-hand man or extra kind of staff member to the recruitment team, and he's kind of joined as kind of a head scouting element, I believe, to the squad. So Maurizio Micheli has joined Arsenal, and Matteo Tognozzi, they decided against appointing him. Matthew says, how did your trip to the San Siro rank against the other important football stadiums that you've been to? Yeah, I mean, it's a great structure. I mean, it's historic and iconic, and to have been there before it gets knocked down is definitely a bucket list football experience ticked off. The fans in there are brilliant. They sung the whole game, even though they were losing for the majority of it. So yeah, it's definitely up there. I think the Bernabeu still remains to me the best experience I've ever had, and just kind of a most overwhelming experience I've ever had covering a game. But yes, certainly San Siro is got to be in the top three, I think. Certainly in the top three. Taylor in Talk says, Tom, how was your view of the San Siro, and how did Vic's movement look overall to you in comparison to previous performances? I think coming off the bench, when the opponent were chasing the game, kind of suited him, and that's one of the reasons he was able to get in behind and get his goal. So, yeah, I do think that maybe that scenario where we bring Victor on to stretch a game towards its end might be a scenario that proves to be helpful for him in being more effective, and something certainly to think about. Sam says people are just not even bothering to read past the headline on Havertz article and immediately melting down. Yeah, it's just concern at the moment, just concern about this. But that tends to be the case. It's why whenever I do tweet out an article these days, I tend to put as much information as I can in the tweet because I just know what people do. I've really stopped giving opinions on Twitter about football as much as I can because I just can't be bothered with the platform. It's a horrible place. Jeffrey is a new member on the channel. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the TGT family, my friend. And thank you so much for the support. It is greatly appreciated indeed. Reg says, first time being able to watch live, usually on Spotify, but I much prefer watching live like this. Well, thank you and so much for joining us, Reg, as well. And we welcome you to the chat box. I hope we'll see you in there more. Mark says, last English team to win at the San Siro then. Yeah, I mean, Arsenal were the first English team to win at the San Siro. Will they be the last English team to win at the San Siro? Maybe. We will wait and see, I guess. Anthony says, Arteta surprised us with Mosquera. Even if Calafiori is ready, I'm guessing he won't say at a press conference. Yeah, I mean, the Mosquera one was shameless, is probably the word I would use. To say that he wasn't ready 4 days later and he was a few weeks away to then being in the squad 4 days later is scandalous. Absolutely. I just can't believe, there's no way in my mind I can believe that he believed he was out for a few weeks and then 4 days later he's in a match day squad. I just cannot for the life of me understand how that happens. Maybe he made a mistake, but I just can't help but think that it just doesn't give accurate team news. I just can't imagine him saying that otherwise. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me at all that anybody would leave themselves in a position to be as vulnerable as you might be if indeed you're surfing the net without a VPN either. And that's why you should be going to NordVPN and securing yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself that amazing money off. Yeah, you didn't see that one coming, did you? You can change your geodigital location online in any of the territories supported by Nord, of course, on your mobile, your tablet, your phone, or any other device that you might have. Tablets? How many people use tablets these days? I feel like tablets have kind of been moved on from, but maybe you still do, and it's protected with Nord. But your laptop, your phone, of course, as well, and you can shield your data from snoopers and criminals on top of that also. So make sure you get involved. nordvpn.com/Gooner. Right, let's carry on with some of your questions, shall we? And find out what you're thinking still. Martin says, Tom, did you see the discussion on the vision that realistically the only place for Eza is on the left? Well, it's something that I've been saying on the channel. I think I want to see Eza play more so on the left. That's where I want to see him. And where I want to see him given kind of a run of games more than anything else is playing on that left-hand side. Love Henry says, question, Tom, what's your favourite goal of the season so far? It's probably Zubimendi against Forest, I want to say, or the Leeds. Was it Forest or Leeds he scored that volley? I feel like it was Forest. But it might have been Leeds. I think it was Forest, yes. Yeah, it's probably the Forest. Probably Zubimendi against Forest. I think that's probably my favourite goal of the season. Spearman saying Madueke's first goal in the Champions League against Club Brugge, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good goal as well. So yeah, it's definitely up there. Martin says, why wouldn't you use a tablet? I mean, people just don't really use tablets these days. I don't really see people using tablets. I guess they're more so for indoors, aren't they? I guess more people use their tablets inside than outside, but tablets just aren't as big of a thing as what they used to be. Andrew says, I really can't believe any of Arteta's responses injured players. He's always a bit of gaming on that front. Yeah, I do tend to agree. It's difficult to ever take anything as gospel. Handel says, given how divided the fan base is on tactics and play style despite our wins and current standing, what is one tactical change or play style that you would like to see implemented? I always struggle with these questions because really, I'm just a fan, as we all are watching this, right? And as you said so brilliantly, Arsenal currently sit top of the Premier League. They're 7 wins from 7, beating Inter, Atletico and Bayern Munich in the Champions League, into the semi-finals of the League Cup with 1 foot in the final, having won at Chelsea away from home in the first leg. And they're into the 4th round of the FA Cup, who they will expect then to beat Wigan Athletic and go to the 5th round. Who am I really to turn around and say I would like to see this tactical element added to the team? Who am I really to be able to say I would like that? I think the thing that I would like to see is just a little bit more faith in some of the players that are not getting as many minutes. That's the only thing I can really say, is to give a little bit more faith to Eza to play and say the left-hand side, just to see what it could do for somebody like him. So, yeah, I'm always a little bit reluctant when a club's doing so well to start questioning how they are doing tactically, if that makes sense. Francis Eza showed just how good and creative he could be on the left wing in the 10 minutes or so he played in the first match against Liverpool. It's a performance that really does stick in my mind, that display. It really, really does. Thomas says, Tom, did you see the clip on official Arsenal's YouTube channel of Gyökeres getting jumped on by a Cherby and Gyökeres getting piggybacked by him? No, I didn't see that. AJ says, I feel like laptops are not as important as tablets or the like these days because phones just took over. Yeah, I mean, I use a laptop every single day for work, but I think on the whole, yeah, that's probably a fair assumption. D says, get a Samsung Fold. A friend of mine has one of them. And when he got out his phone the other day and he had this folding phone, strange device, really strange. I kind of like it, but I just never would break away from Apple now these days. I just can't see myself breaking away from it. Chris says, look at how Arteta slowly eased Jesus back into the team and it has worked out very well. Havertz, on the other hand, has hardly even got 5 minutes. If he was ready, Arteta would be using him more often. Sam says, I think you're a bit obsessed with Ødegaard. I mean, I like Ødegaard a lot, but I wouldn't say obsessed, mate. Reg says, would you say Arteta's willingness to rotate has been his biggest improvement over the last few seasons? Certainly, I think he's had more of a squad this season, but I don't think I'd say the last few seasons, because he hasn't had as many players available as he's had this season. Most players, he had so many injuries to deal with that I'm not sure necessarily that he's been able to rotate as much as he would like. But this season, in particular, I think we have seen that level of rotation improve over the course of this season, in particular, when he's had the depth available to him. Marissa's, I'm the same, Tom. I can't bring myself to use an Android. I just couldn't. I just don't think I could. Money Motivated Boss says, thanks, Tom. We are just fans. Just like Slot said, you don't advise your surgeon. Why advise your manager, who's also a pro? Yeah, look, you can have opinions, but seriously, if you think you've got better ideas than Mikel Arteta managing a football team, then that's some arrogance to another level. Bonafide says, Tom, why is it that every time I get to catch your shows live, you always seem to be nagging about something that's wrong with the team? Today, it's Havertz's fitness concerns. It's irritating. Well, it's not my fault. It's the story. We cover the stories each day. You just seem to tune in whenever there's something a bit of bad news in the news at the moment. It's not my fault. You go over to the person who reported it, moan at them, not me. Love Henry says, if we sign Thomas Rositzky, would you play him left 8, right 8, right wing, left wing? Good question. I'd probably play him instead of Martin Odegaard at the moment, because Odegaard's not in the best state of form. So yeah, I'd probably play him in the attacking central midfield role right now. Mark says, Arteta's squad rotation has been excellent, but I also think he's due credit for making better late substitutions that have also influenced games. It's a good shout. Definitely we've seen substitutes influence games, certainly. Ronald says, Tom, have you seen the link to FC Schalke's Echhorn, 16-year-old defensive midfielder? I haven't, Ronald. No, I haven't personally seen those. Roy says, Tom, I was off work yesterday, so that might be why. Roy says, Tom, can you think of a better first goal for Arsenal than Zubimendi's? Oh, there probably is a better first goal, and there's probably a really obvious example that I'm forgetting, but that's definitely up there for you as like like you score a first goal and it's like that. That is very impressive. It's a shame that Madueke's against Club Brugge was his second goal because he scored against Bayern Munich, didn't he? So, yeah, difficult. Reyes, it's not a bad shout. Was that the Middlesbrough goal? Was that his first ever Arsenal goal? Because if it was, that's a great example. I'm trying to think of what it was now. Couple more. It was against Chelsea. Yes, you're right. I'm trying to think of a couple more. I can't. Right, a few more questions before we wrap things up as well. Arshavin's goal was great. It was that tight angle, wasn't it? Like near the touchline, and he managed to kind of dink it in. Alexis Sanchez. Was it Manchester City? Was that Alexis's goal? Was his first goal against Manchester City? If it was a hell of a strike. Certainly was a very, very good goal. Butzells says, there has been a lot of talk about Julian Alvarez. Would you like to see him in an Arsenal shirt? Who would you make way for a striker? I guess if he comes, it's probably Jesus that leaves if Alvarez was to sign. I do think it's important to point out that David Ornstein was very clear about his comments on Julian Alvarez. In fact, he had to reply to, and I have to say, look, I'm never a big fan of aggregation at the best of times. I do think it's killing journalism to a degree, but there is a particular aggregator. I don't even think I want to say whose name it was, but all I need to tell you is that David Ornstein replied to them, and it perfectly highlighted just how awful some aggregators can be. Some aggregators are fine, but the aggregation that we saw that David Ornstein had to reply to was horrendous. And that particular account is one I'd recommend blocking as soon. I've had them blocked for a long time, but I'd recommend blocking them immediately because they are awful, really, really bad. So if you need to find out who it is, I don't need to tell you. Just go down David Ornstein's replies; it will come up for you eventually. But yeah, there has been mentions of Julian Alvarez, and it's basically that report came about because David was on a show on Sky with Clive, and Clive brought up Julian Alvarez, and David responded to her saying he's a player that Arsenal have obviously been aware of, but he's not a player that Arsenal have moved for. So, no. Let's go to Lechat. Says, please, can you ask Mikel how the players feel and react and falling to capitalise on City and Villa's dropping points? I mean, they've just beaten Inter Milan. They did extend their lead over City and Villa at the weekend when they got the draw at Nottingham Forest. It's not the time to ask that question. Thomas says, Tom, can you tell my Man City fan brother that we're going to win the league? I can't because I don't know him. But just let him know to watch the rest of the Arsenal games for the remainder of the season, mate. And he can watch it himself. Fran says, no question, just appreciation. Keep it up, Tom. Thank you, Matt. It's very kind of you to drop super chat in. Really do appreciate it. And thank you for your generosity. It does help us out. Tom says, I saw James Ben's reply to an aggregator a few days ago with, I literally never said that. Just follow the proper journalists. And that's all I can say to you. Look, I get it. I get it's really useful for people to have kind of like accounts that will share all of the news from all the different journalists, but some people just don't aggregate in the right way. They don't link to the piece that someone's written. They effectively, and especially when some pieces are behind a paywall. And I know people get irritated with paywalls, and I get it. You know, you don't want to have to pay for so many different subscriptions, but people put a lot of work into getting information about stories, put a lot of work into getting to a level where they're employed by people like The Athletic, for instance, of course, which is typically behind a paywall. But even Isan, for instance, at the Mail, some of his articles are behind paywalls at the Mail. Some articles are behind a paywall at the Telegraph, like Sam Dean, for instance. And I get that people want to have access to these articles for free, but journalists need to be paid. They need to be paid for the work that they do. And unfortunately, these days, you do see so many bits of information that are behind a paywall just get aggregated immediately, and it is going to kill the business eventually. It's going to kill the business of journalism, and as a result, fans are going to find out very little about what goes on. The really good investigative work that journalists do is going to become, unfortunately, undermined as a result of it. It's thankfully there are people out there that do aggregate properly. They retweet the stories, they link the articles, they encourage people to go and read the work. But there are some accounts out there that just think adding your Twitter handle is enough. And it's not appropriate, and it's not okay at all. And it really does undermine a lot of the work that goes on in the world of journalism and in that sort of thing. Let's go to Love Henry says, Tom, question, do you think City spent more on transfers or lawyers? Good question. Good question. Jahiro says, does RVP make it to the end of the season without getting sacked? Of course, he's under a bit of pressure at the moment with fine order. Not only that, but they've seen Quentin Timber, Jurriën Timber's brother, now leave as a result of kind of a fracture between the manager and him. And he's a big player for Feyenoord, and he's left. But they're still second in the table, but they are a long way behind PSV. A long, long way. If they finish behind Ajax, maybe. Martin says, Paul, I'm with you. My Samsung is way better than any iPhone. We're getting into Android Apple wars now in the chat. Red Skull says, Tom, do you think Arsenal can sign Rodrigo in this window? No, I don't think Arsenal can sign anybody really for a significant fee during this January window. UA for FFP is quite tight on Arsenal during this window. And we've got a big squad as well. I don't think we're really looking to sign players, but maybe we'll get a surprise, but I highly doubt it. There's only a week to go now in the window, and Arsenal haven't looked at all like signing anybody. Taylor in Talk says, if a certain people think this channel is like X, they need to find somewhere else to respect each other. And that's the thing. Like, we talk about news, we talk about what the stories are, but I'm giving you my opinion about these stories that we talk about. I'm giving you my opinion about the news that's going around at the moment from being in the business of journalism. So and I encourage you always go and read the pieces. We're discussing it from the perspective of being in it, as opposed to just saying so-and-so said this. So that's the difference between kind of the aggregation and discussing news. There is a difference between the two things, from being inside, from this side of kind of the line, and the other side of the line. Love Henry says, have you ever seen a player like Jurriën coming back from ACLs and being this good? Rodrigo at City looks like a bit of, looks like a shell of the player, of course, you know, since coming back from injury, I guess. Yeah, I see what you're saying. it's so difficult to come back from an injury of that level. So difficult to come back from an injury of that level. Yeah, really, really difficult. And some players do it more successfully than others. Bear versus Zombie says, do you think Arteta will try something different against Man United? And the answer is probably not. I mean, if it ain't broke, why fix it? We're still doing exceptionally well in what we're doing here. So I don't think we need to change necessarily too much about how we're playing right now because it's getting us good results. Simon says, what do we need to win? What do we need to win cups? League we can win, but the cups you need decisive goals and scorers and willingness from the manager to be brave. I mean, you've just seen Arsenal go to San Siro and win 3-1. So we're getting plenty of evidence that that's the case. We've gone to Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final and won 3-2, 6 goals away at Chelsea and Inter Milan. That's pretty brave. Handel says, I jest, but Arsenal fans are like, I mean, I'm not going to read that out because that's just a sexist comment, mate. So you can see you later. Dennis says, credit to Berta for making sure that we have a summer big enough that we are not desperate for January signings. For now, all we need is our players fit, even if it's for 15-game runs, and we are good. I think the window that we did, the window from the summer, is ultimately the first window, really, where we've gone into the season and think, I don't think we need to do anything in January. And January windows really are for clubs that didn't finish their business in the summer. They didn't finish their business in the summer, and as a result, they have to go into the January window. That wasn't the case with Arsenal. We completed our business in the summer, and so there isn't a need to go into the window in January. Simeon says, Arsenal of old were the same, performed well in the early rounds. I mean, we're in the semi-finals of the League Cup, mate, and we're winning away at Chelsea. If you want to call the semi-final an early round, sure. Mark says, what have you heard about the pursuit of Blackburn's Igor Tijon? There were loads of stories at the beginning of January, and it's all gone a bit quiet. He's been a player that's been on Arsenal's radar for a long time, and he's a player that Arsenal have had serious discussions and serious kind of conversations about potential offerings and bids to Blackburn. But yeah, it has gone a bit quiet, and I can't say I've heard any breakthroughs around that. But it's not a story that I've been chasing myself. Dennis says, are we not supposed to perform well in the early rounds? What kind of reasoning is that? I know, it was a silly one. Misunderstood Ninja says, the start of the window, we were all panicking. They left it so, did they leave it so late? I don't think they did they? I think they pretty much got most of what they needed to do done before or halfway through pre-season. I don't think they left it late at all. I think the majority of Arsenal's business was done before the season started. Every single player except Eza and Nkapie, I think, came in, and they were kind of extra signings. They weren't starting signings. They were depth, competitive signings for the squad. So Arsenal did all of the business they needed to do for their starting 11 before the season started. So I don't think Arsenal left it late at all. Happy When Drumming says, what about a loan for a defender who can play in games like Kairat and Wigan so our starting defenders can rest? Well, I mean, we've kind of got that. Calafiori hopefully back soon. We have Miles Lewis-Skelly, therefore we have Nkapia hopefully back soon, fingers crossed. And Mosquera is now back as well. Ben White is here. So again, we've kind of got, haven't we, our players. We've got our depth. We've got our options. Marley Salmon, I think it would be a great opportunity to see him get some minutes against Kairat. So yeah, I don't think necessarily we need to worry about signing a defender unless we get a serious injury to somebody in the next week. Sam says the FA Cup is not a small trophy. Yeah, it's not a small trophy. I mean, I don't know. I don't really understand people like this who talk about the FA Cup so dismissively. If you think the FA Cup's a small trophy, I can only imagine that you haven't been watching football for a very long time or know much about the sport. The FA Cup's a major trophy. So I don't really understand ever anyone disregarding the FA Cup like that. Arsenal Domination says, sorry if already been discussed, but do you see any credible reports about a January exit for Norgard? I can't see why we countenance it unless there's an unknown replacement lined up. Yeah, it would make no sense for Norgard to leave. He's really important. He's valued incredibly by Arteta. I'd be very surprised if he left. But let me see if I can find anywhere where it's being talked about for you. So it seems on Sky it was discussed. Was it good friend of the show? Just listening. Ajax. Ooh. So apparently Ajax have been, this is called a Darmesh at Sky. So Ajax are looking at Norgard. But as far as I'm aware, Arsenal consider him exceptionally important, and he's very happy at Arsenal as well, even though he's not playing loads of minutes. He knew that when he arrived. He knew that was going to be the reality. So I'd be surprised if Norgard left in January. Maybe in the summer after a single season. That wouldn't surprise me, but I'd be very surprised in January. Very, very surprised indeed. Arthur says, does it concern you that Waneri will be competing against Greenwood for positions in Marseille's team? Obviously, Greenwood's been doing very well with Marseille. But the reality is that Arsenal have put clauses in that loan deal to encourage them to play Waneri. So hopefully that encourages Marseille to use him as much as feasibly possible. The reality is that you're not going to get a free pathway as an 18-year-old into any team that are currently one of the biggest sides in Europe. Marseille are a very big team, and they're competing in the Champions League. If you're a Champions League team and an 18-year-old Waneri can just walk straight into your 11, that probably says something about your team. No shade on Waneri. That's just the reality. So he's going to have to fight for a place like he has at Arsenal, but it is less of a fight than it was being at Arsenal 4 minutes as well. Tony says, Tom, can you imagine what would happen if there wasn't any structure in place concerning what clubs could spend? Yeah, it'd be very scary. I mean, we had that. That's what happened at the start of kind of the Chelsea era of spending. There wasn't really any limits on what teams could do, and so also Manchester City in the start of their life as being one of the main competitors in the Premier League and the spending that they had. So they had to introduce those restrictions. Otherwise, we would have been in a very, 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 very dangerous place. Last couple, and then we'll be wrapping things up. First help says, how can a player be happy being a captain and then becoming a bench player? It shows what type of man he is. Oh, there's silly comments, and then there's that. Daniel says, I was working at Man City last week and I saw Rodri. He said he thinks we'll win the league. I don't think that's true, Daniel. I don't think that's true. But I wish it was. I wish it was true. And Simon reckons that Greenwood and Waneri will end up playing in the same team. Maybe Waneri will play kind of in a different position potentially as well. Yeah. Right. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic Friday. You've made it to the end of the week, which is great. Thank you so much as always for doing so. And I look forward, of course, to speaking with you a lot more in the upcoming episodes. Of course, we'll be breaking down the press conference from today. And we'll be looking ahead to the game against Manchester United on Sunday. Thank you so much. Drop a like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube-y stuff. And as always, up the Arsenal.